I believe it's an exciting time, despite the fact that it doesn't feel so good right now in the mining space. We had a good 2020. We were all excited, hoping for an even better 2021. It didn't really work out that way. Even though a lot of our companies have made great progress in the field, there just wasn't enough interest in the market to carry us through. From my perspective, in my newsletter, we were fortunate to have the Great Bear buyout, the Ely Gold buyout, and the Vizsla Silver, making great strides. But other than that, it was a tough year for us. I often say in this business that patience is a virtue. I've been trading these things for 40 some years myself. As a newsletter writer, this is my 22nd year. And if you don't have patience, you're going to have a tough time in this business. And you have to learn to be a contrarian, as most of you know. I find the older investors who have been through this year after year, decade after decade, they do have the patience. It's some of the younger investors we're trying to teach patience. They like to see things happen right away. But I do believe we're very bullish in my view. It's just a matter of when. We know how this thing turns on. It's like a light switch. It's not on, and the next minute it is, and it's game on. So I do think we're going to have a big breakout. One thing I learned a long time ago, my message today is to keep things simple. Don't overcomplicate things. I've been listening to a lot of people. When things get difficult, people get into these long, complicated explanations of why things aren't happening the way they should. In college, I had a philosophy class, and based on listening to the professor for a semester, I decided that the business of philosophers was to make things complicated. They were just the opposite of simple, what I think. So I think sometimes we make things too complicated because we don't want to face the truth about things, because the truth is simply too clear, too powerful, and too cogent. And the truth to me is that precious metal prices are in store for a big breakout. So with that, let me get into my next screen here. I have found that when I say keep things simple, let's get back to the basics, okay? And the basics to me are simple, and it's the theme of our generation has been the devaluation of currencies, fiat currencies that are backed by nothing but political promises. And those promises, of course, are imploding everywhere. But the other theme is that we have wars and rumors of wars. And, even though from a technological standpoint, it looks like things are doing very well, these two themes haunt the narrative that everything is well. And for now, I believe gold is getting ready for a big breakout in the near-term horizon. There's a lot of things we always look at. I've talked about all kinds of things over the year, the black swan events, the real rate of interest, when we look at the gold price and try to figure things out. But these three things, and I'm going to focus on this, and I'm going to refer to Richard Maybury's newsletter, his early warning report. I have several quotes in my presentation. If you have not read his January edition of his early warning report, I consider it, I've read Richard for decades. This was one of his best newsletters ever, and I recommend it to everybody, but we'll share some of that with you in my presentation today. So massive inflation will finally show up in the numbers. The December situation we'll talk about, but the inflation has been building, not showing up. But I think this year and the ensuing years, we're going to see it. That's, of course, going to be very good for gold. Just the general economic chaos and confusion that is happening with this divided world we live in. And, of course, the war and rumors of wars narrative that I'll explain why I think that's become a big issue. So let's take the first one of the three, massive inflation in 2022 and beyond. The U.S. hit 7% inflation in December. That's the fastest pace since 1982. Gold, of course, has been going up against all fiat currencies worldwide. But, the inflation, they've been able to kind of maintain it. It hasn't looked too bad as of yet, but I think that's going to drastically change now. Once governments create massive amounts of money, it doesn't happen right away. It does take some time, and I think 2022 is the big breakout year. But something I want people to remember: investors often get this confused. Inflation is not the rise of prices; it is the falling value of money. That's how you have to understand this and look at this. So keep that in mind. Smart investors, in my view, are buying tangible assets, tangible being an asset you can touch, instead of the fiat made up or enforced by political decree currencies of world governments. All of the governments are abusing their systems of credit and abusing their fiat currencies. Based on the historical data, when big inflations occur, smart investors typically go from paper currencies and go to precious metals, real estate, plant, property, and equipment stocks, companies, corporations that own lots of property, plant, and equipment, raw materials such as copper, corn, coffee, coal, and collectibles. I always tell investors, when you look at a list like this, in my view, the most undervalued on this list is precious metals. That is not only the physical precious metals, even though their prices, gold price may seem rather high from historical norms, it's still, in my view, grossly undervalued. Other items on this list that are tangible: real estate seems to be in a bubble, even though real estate market has performed incredibly well. Same thing with the stocks. The stocks are at a high value at this point, opposed to what I believe could happen in the short term if a market correction was to occur. So all of these things, of course, are what get investors' attention, and the smart people know that money is being devalued. The things that are on that list, of course, none of these items can be created out of thin air as dollars and other political currencies can. We could also include fine art, antiques, classic cars, rare books, and more on that tangible list. But again, what I've found over the years is that in those items, you have to make sure you buy the highest quality, the best of the best items in that sector. And that's really how I've seen people make money. Richard Maybury quote. This is the first quote that I wanted to give to you from his January newsletter, the early warning report. Governments and the mainstream press want you to believe the culprit of this inflation causing the rising prices is greedy, evil businesses. That is a lie. I hope people can see through that. Governments lie, and they try to hide their shenanigans, and the devaluing of currency is the shenanigan. Don't let them trick you into thinking it's something else. It is simply the politicians and the bureaucrats, especially those in the Federal Reserve, expanding the amount of money. When the quantity of money is increased, the value of each currency unit goes down. This is just basic, simple, but I believe that people just need to understand that precious metal prices are going into the stratosphere because of this basic fact. And no matter what happens, no matter how long it takes, it's just a matter of time before it happens. The reason there's a reason counterfeiting is illegal. I always have to chuckle when I talk about this. Counterfeiters increase the money supply, thereby debasing the currency. The FBI and similar organizations worldwide hunt these people down and put them in jail for a very long time. But the political types who make counterfeiting illegal for criminals make it okay for themselves. This is a basic fact that cheats the taxpayer, the citizen. A lot of citizens don't even understand how negatively this affects them over time. Year to year, it may not look so bad, but over a 10-year period, you can see just exactly how this destroys families, generational wealth, and things like that. So these political and bureaucratic types call what they do monetary policy. Of course, when they do something criminal or illegal, they have to come up with a term for it: quantitative easing, monetary policy. Okay, but these are just the facts. During the 1780s, 1860s, and 1970s, US politicians and bureaucrats went wild creating money. And in recent years, they have once again done so with even greater reckless abandon. This current inflation is going to be one for the record books. And I believe that they've gotten away with it for about a couple of years now, but it's starting to finally catch up. And once we go over the waterfall, it's going to be quite a significant event. When you compare that, what they're doing, the production of tangible assets is restrained by the laws of physics and chemistry. And while these assets, such as precious metals, cannot be reproduced any other way than by going out, exploring, developing, and building mines to produce them, the other political fiat is just increased with the key punch of a computer stroke. So, just remember, there's limitations, restraints by the laws of nature and physics, how these things can be produced. As investors and citizens, we are faced with, in my view, the greatest economic chaos and confusion we ever faced in our lifetimes. People call me and ask me questions all the time. A lot of the questions I get, other than, Greg, when's our market going to go? A lot of people lately have been asking me, Greg, is America going to make it? All right, good question. If I had time, I'd like to go into that, but right now I don't. The greatest chaos and confusion, what I mean by that, we're seeing massive wealth imbalances. The rich, the ultra rich are making insane amounts of money, while the middle classes and even upper middle classes are getting further and further behind. This inflation really affects the average person. The data in Canada and the US, I've brought this up before, 72% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. They have huge credit card debt and no savings. Canada is not quite as bad. The average citizen, I think it's 58%, are in that same scenario. So this inflation is going to really hit the bulk of the populations of both Canada and US and worldwide. Already, I have clients over in Germany who are telling me that the people are trying to protest, but the way they protest is they light candles at night and walk around in the middle of the night, protesting the fact that they can't keep up. They can't pay the bills, can't afford the mortgage and pay the food bill, right? So they walk around at night with candles. Do you think the government pays attention? Of course not. Bubble markets. These bubble markets are an epic proportion level. I just had a friend up in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. He bought a house 2 years ago for $1.4 million. It's not even 2 years ago, about 1 year and 8 months ago. Bought a house for $1.4 million right on the river, very popular area to be. They just got offered $3.4 million for it. That's a bubble, people. How can a house go from 1.4 million to 3.4 million in less than 2 years? Well, it's a very popular area. People want to be on the river. So this money, all this newly created money, has to go somewhere. And these people that have big money like that are making insane amounts of money, can just offer whatever they want for the house. The other problem with the greatest chaos and confusion, I believe, is these heavily corrupted and divided governments that we have. Not only that, but the governments all hate one another. You got these crony corporations with these political messages. We have grossly divided populations politically, vax versus unvax, social division, hatred fueled by the media, news organizations, and the corporations. This is not sustainable. I've said this before, but it's shocking to see how much they're pushing this agenda. Obviously, they want us divided. A house divided cannot stand, right? The third item, the wars and rumors of wars. The biggest threat seems to be in this category, the escalation of tensions between Beijing and the US. Most people don't even understand this or realize it, but the US and Chinese governments appear to have rekindled their 1948 to 1980 vendetta. And we've been creeping closer and closer to war for a decade or more. Richard Maybury, again, I'll go back to his January newsletter. He had some great comments about this. Governments hate each other. They're like street gangs. Since 3600 BC, they have fought more than 14,000 wars against each other. 14,000 wars, my goodness. Much of what is happening between the US and China goes on hidden from both populations as the months leading up, similar to what was the months leading up to World War II. China wants to regain dominance of the South China Sea, the East and Yellow China Seas, and attendant land areas. U.S. rulers on the opposite end have been forcibly establishing and maintaining bases in these areas since 1898. The U.S. has no intention of pulling out. So there we have a big problem. And even though the public doesn't fully understand this, behind the scenes, the people that I talk to in the military know this is a big deal. And we all need to be aware of that. Hopefully it doesn't happen. So based on everything I'm seeing, and I'm trying to boil this down and to keep it simple, gold is getting ready to make the next big jump to another new all-time high. How high? I can't say, but this is going to be a big one. This will be the biggest one, I think, of all the new all-time highs we've seen in the last, 20 years. And I believe as these three items, the inflation, the chaos and confusion, and the war and rumors of war narrative, as these all happen and roar at the same time, watch as the stampede into anything precious metals occurs. This is critical. This is the moment that we're going to see some major changes in our world. In my view, this will be the biggest run we have ever witnessed in the precious metal junior mining share market, period. In our lifetimes, this will be it. This will be the big one. We've experienced 2003 to 2006. We had the big 2008 meltdown and then the rebound. That was a big one. This will eclipse those in a major way. And all I can say is that I think we're in a situation now where it's just a matter of time. And this is the big year. 2022 will be the big year. My two newsletters, The Mining Speculator, The Insider Alert. To subscribe, www.discoverynexus.com.